Well, happy Marcast Monday here, following the Labor Day Classic, Labor Day weekend here. When we had the commissioner on the podcast last week, he always talks about, fun, fast, exciting. I can't, the three F's, whatever. Randy, brother, this was a really good weekend. This was a hot weekend here. Jason, I think, is feeling it a little bit. Evan's here. We're early today. Jason, how are we doing?
I felt better, honestly, because I did a lot of partying yesterday with the doubleheader, but it was a great weekend, and let's talk some football.
Yeah, Mariners loss. It's terrible. We're struggling here in the AL West, but this was good. BC Lions winning on what was that? It's Friday now. At this, when the heck was that? Evan, how are you doing?
Doing well. Yeah, it was a great weekend of football. One of the more important weekends, I think, for CFL football all year. Just given, it's Labor Day Classic, obviously. But yeah, I was really impressed with a lot of those games. Some of them really surprised me. And yeah, just excited to dive into it.
Yeah, I was trying to explain to Dorothy the whole it's like the divisional stuff. I don't know why BC played this weekend. I know normally that's Ottawa spot, BC getting in Ottawa doing that, but that worked out well for us here the Saturday beating Montreal. I have a lot of funny tweets and stuff to get into today, but I guess we'll start. Exciting game last night. Come from behind. We had headed out to dinner, and we were, like Trey kind of was putting the game to bed, and I tweeted, and why does it take 10 weeks to start Trey Forward and kind of everything else? Next thing you know, Calgary comes back. It kind of incredible. Come from behind victory. We pulled it up. We were having a beer down the street. We're watching the game on our phone. Jason, what did you make of this? I know you were catching up, late on data after the fact, trying to kind of catch up on this game. I would not expect this from Calgary.
Yeah, it was totally unexpected because there was very little time left in the game. I think it was around 5 minutes to go when they kicked the field goal. Edmonton did to go up 11 points. And then, just the surprising rally from Calgary. I was like, wow, they scored a touchdown quickly because I turned off my data for a minute. And then like a few minutes later, I'm like, oh, they're coming back. So it was a pretty crazy game, and good to see that from Jake Maier and the Stampeders. They've come out on the wrong end of a lot of these close games this year. So it's good to see that from them.
Yeah, Evan, I know we were kind of watching this in the chat as well. Andy was going crazy. The professor, I guess Reggie Begelton is the professor now. I heard, was it Rod Smith or whatever you're calling that? What did you, because Calgary has just struggled. Their offense was booed, leaving the field, I guess, at halftime. People were tweeting out. I know Ryan, one of our listeners, was tweeting out to see this turnaround. I don't know if Jake yelled at them at halftime or what was going on.
Yeah, I mean, I know at the end of the game they interviewed Jake Maier, and he said something along the lines of, we just have to learn to put things in the past. Like I think a light bulb or something switched off at some point there, and they were just like, you know what, like we just have to go do this. Like don't worry about everything that's happened. Like we just have to go now because this is our opportunity. And 22 fourth quarter points for Calgary, I think, tells most of that story. Yeah, it was really. I mean, I had the game on. I was getting some work done, so I was kind of paying attention. I had it on in the background, and I didn't really look at the score. I mean, and I got up from my chair to go get something. I looked, and I'm like, oh geez, like Calgary's right back in this. That was when they scored the touchdown right before the 3-minute warning. And then I watched that final drive, which was, I mean, probably one of the better, game-winning drives. Like that to me, like that was like almost the last sign of life, I think, from Calgary, just because they've had so many, offensive issues this year. To see them put together that drive, like Jake Maier had a big 3rd and 6 conversion. I mean, it was a free play because AC Leonard was offsides anyway, but, I think it was to Reggie down the field, seeing him do that. That was great, and again, that was kind of like, I mean, if Calgary were to lose that game, I mean, it was going to be all over. That was it. Then it was time to start focusing on next year, and it still might be. I don't know how much this win actually saves them, but the fact that they were able to put that together in front of a strong home crowd again on Labor Day weekend with everything at stake, it was just really good for Calgary. I think they definitely needed that confidence boost.
Yeah, I have the tweet here from Hodge talking the Peter save their season. I mean, I was watching this game. Maier had the interception and he had a big sack, and I think he had the fumble, and they were able to recover. I said, I mean, this is kind of the season for Jake here at this point. Like, I don't know if you can go into next year here where, and I got to pull up the standings and the records, but if they drop another one, and we had talked about the importance of that, last week where they had the home and home, and if they go here and they're 3-9 going into like, I just don't know what that season looks like going into next year. Jason, were you? I mean, this was kind of make or break, I think, for Jake Mayer last night.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that on the other side of the coin, if they can win these 2 games, they're right back in the thick of things. So I think it's interesting because they also have another game against Saskatchewan later on. If they win that, they'll have the tiebreaker over them. So, I mean, they're still in the mix here. They just have to take advantage of these opportunities. But they were able to do that in this one. So one check mark off the board there.
Yeah, I have this. Ryan was tweeting, our offense just got booed off the field here at McMahon. Derek Dennis. Wow. I like seeing Derek, former Cal Stampeder there. Really remarkable. The other thing to note, too, is just kind of how lopsided this game was. And I want to talk Trey Ford of it all. Edmonton, 0 passing yards thus far in the first half when kind of all this came down. Trey running crazy because I don't want his performance, to kind of be overshadowed here with the comeback. Trey was something else. Evan, I know Andy was going crazy in the chat. What did you make of Trey Ford here? 4th week in a row now, I guess, starting.
Yeah, I mean, another day, another complete performance from Trey Ford. I would have liked to see, I think, a bit more when it came to throwing the ball. I think they left a couple things on the board there. But ultimately, I mean, again, his running ability like that, even in the NFL or college football or, a more broad platform here, like in the U.S., I don't know if I'm seeing a lot of quarterbacks do things that Trey Ford is doing, when it comes to running the football. I know we have a couple guys in the NFL that, Lamar Jackson would probably be the best comparison. And before that, Cam Newton and Michael Vick. But, I mean, this is, this was something else. I'll say that much. I have not seen scrambling ability like that, in a while. And, again, I'm really glad it's all coming together because, like, he's flashed this before. He's had opportunities to go in there and to run, and there were a lot of things that people liked about that, but now it's just at a whole new level, and it's really coming together. And I think this was the best example of specifically what he can do with his feet, because I mean, he had so many plays in that game where you're just like, that shouldn't be possible. I think you keep looking at it, you're like, that's not right, that's not possible. And I mean, you can't even, I mean, yeah, like you could make the argument like, well, Calgary's defense should just be tackling him, but I don't know. I mean, he's pretty evasive, and I think it would be difficult for even one of the better defenses in the league to go tackle that. And I do think Calgary's defense is pretty good in some aspects. So, yeah.
I think they were talking on the broadcast. I think Dunnigan had said the week before, when you get into the league, until you can kind of figure it out, just keep running. And I thought that was very indicative of Trey, where you have the athleticism, the great elusive athletic Taylor Cornelius is not doing this and not rushing for 135 yards. Dunk had this tweet, talking about Canadian football. I posted the funny meme kind of floating around the weekend with one of the refs adjusting his pants at one of the college games. I thought that was like getting very excited here watching this. Jason, what did you make? I mean, this is kind of historic stuff Trey is doing right now.
Yeah, he's played incredible since taking over this starting job in Edmonton. And I think the thing that stands out to me is just the awareness he has when he's running the ball. He doesn't take many big hits. And I think that's obviously he got injured last year. So I think that's something that he's trying to avoid, but he's doing it in a smart way. And I mean, just the speed that he has just puts so much pressure on CFL defenses. It's clear that, with this big field, these guys really struggle to, chase them down. So I think at the end of the day, that's been game changing for the Elks offense. And I think that at the end of the day, in terms of the whole rest of the season, it actually gives us a reason to watch Elks games going forward because he's an exciting player to watch.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, even they lost here, and I really thought, I mean, like I said, Dorothy and I kind of headed out. I'm like, man, like Edmonton's really putting it together, and they've got 3 wins in a row here. You still feel like they have a lot of momentum here. I don't know if it was the defense that kind of let Edmonton down here. What do you make of that? Did Calgary win the game, Evan, or did their defense kind of give up here near the end?
Yeah, I would say, I mean, I don't know, like it's a tale of two halves, I think, or it even comes down to quarters, but I feel like this was more Calgary winning the game and just taking a stance and saying, like, you know what, we're not going to let this opportunity slip away from us. I mean, again, that fourth quarter was just, you don't see a fourth quarter like that very often. I mean, we've had a couple games in the CFL. Like, this isn't the first time Edmonton has blown a lead. You go back to that Winnipeg game where, that was going to be their first home win and like everything looked right. And then, they just couldn't put it together at the end. And unfortunately, that's the same thing here. And I mean, again, at this point, I think Edmonton, either way, whether they win games or not, is heading towards, some sort of change again at the end of the season and into the off season. But, it always looks nice to win. And again, taking down a rival on Labor Day at their stadium, that would have been a really good opportunity, I think, for them to capitalize. And they didn't, again, which is okay, because we know this team isn't complete. Yes, it sucks. And yes, this was a winnable game for them. They've been in a lot more winnable games since Trey Ford took over as the starter than they were before, like a lot more. But yeah, ultimately, I feel like Edmonton just kind of, this one slipped out of their hands a bit. And, they could have done, they definitely could have done more to prevent that. But, it didn't happen. So,
yeah, you want to see Edmonton kind of maybe get the bounce back here. You'd hate to see them lose the momentum here next week with Calgary coming in to play. And obviously we got the monkey off the back with all the home losing streak and all that. But you don't want to see Edmonton kind of totally fall apart. It does make it makes you feel better to be an Edmonton Elks fan right now and kind of feeling excited for the future. Jason, other thoughts on this game?
Not too much. I mean, I'll just highlight some player performances I thought were impressive. Steven Dunbar's really got it going for the Elks over the past couple of weeks. Good to see that from him because he's one of the highest paid receivers, I do believe, in the CFL this season. I thought that the Elks defensive line played well at times during this game. Jake Sorezna, Coney Ely, AC Leonard, all getting after Jake Mayer at times. And you talked about those 2 turnovers that Jake Mayer had. I think it was in the third quarter. So I think that was pretty big for Edmonton at that point in the game. Unfortunately, they couldn't, capitalize on it. And then Marcus Lewis with his 3rd interception of the season for Edmonton as well. So some guys really stepping up. And then on the Calgary side, I thought the receivers played very well down the stretch in this game. Markeith Ambles was a former Stampeder, came back this season, has done a pretty good job since coming back into the lineup. And then Reggie Bagleton has been, just beast mode the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, Steven Dunbar, friend of the show now, was on last week. I love the player interviews are fun to me because kind of what makes him tick and kind of getting into it. But he was the funniest guy. I'm just not even gonna barely die. Somebody's got to like speak up, like enunciate, man. Get excited here. We're doing all this stuff. Evan, any other thoughts? I want to see if I have anything else funny to pull up here.
I don't know. I'll check to see. There's probably a couple players I do want to highlight here. Yeah, I'd say Calgary's receiving core as a whole in this game. I know that they were able to throw the ball more and kind of open things up towards the end of the game. I still wouldn't call this flawless, but they probably had, I think, between Mark and Michelle, Markeith Ambles, Reggie Bagleton, and you can even throw Luther Hakunavanu in there. I feel like they really had a bit more chemistry this time around. I don't know. I'm not looking back at every game, so I don't know if this is the most complete game that they've played from that standpoint, but really liked kind of the chemistry that was there. And again, it really reminded me of sort of what BC is doing, that they're spreading around the ball a bit. I mean, you've got 4 catches, 7 catches, 6 catches, 3 catches, different guys, going different places on the field. So that's always good to see. And then on the Edmonton side of the ball, Geno Lewis, he really it was good to see him get going. He, again, one of my favorite receivers in the league. Again, didn't have a huge game, but, he did enough, did what he was asked to do. And Manny Arsenault, again, getting in there, second on the team in catches and yards. I feel like, he just came back from injury and, he's over 9,000 yards now, I think. I might have brought that up last week. But anyway, just good to see him still going at that age. And, definitely one of the more true veteran guys around in the CFL now, up there with, the Trevor Harrises of the world and things like that.
Yeah, we have a couple comments here checking in. Coach Craig Sports, friend of the show. Dunbar on the Marquette scores 2 DDs, 2 DDs the same week. Coincidence? I think not. Also, Lewis is checking in here, and we had someone. Oh yeah, Al Vaticanator finally able to make it live. Yeah, doing it a little early today. Appreciate Evan getting up and doing that and working here with the Tuesday schedule. James checking in. BTS Dance Studio. The games are awesome. The other thing I had was the attendance, like the Danny Austin of the world was like going crazy because the game and the Battle of Alberta, like it was later than it normally was. It looked like the crowd was fine. I mean, I think the weather there was supposed to be kind of hazy. They canceled the flyover. I know they were doing the military appreciation, but it seemed fine. I had the Bangleton, the professor, I said that comment. Tommy Lee Lewis looking huge. Yeah, they had said Calgary hadn't lost 4 in a row since 2004. So they were kind of getting into that historic period there, had they have dropped another one. But I really thought that it just looked to me like Trey was having a lot of fun on the sidelines. Mayer was not in the first half, and then obviously he was kind of marking out at the end of the game. But it just seemed like it's been kind of a painful process for Jake this season. Doesn't seem like he's necessarily enjoying his time where Trey, he's just kind of a smiley, happy guy. They had him doing one of the like, hey, I'm Trey Ford. You're watching the Labor Day Classic here. Like, I kind of thought all that was good. Like, let's highlight some of these, some of these young guys and Canadian guys. But yeah, I was once told in the CFL that no lead was safe. And that's what everyone tells me every time. And so there you go. Jason, anything else with this? We'll get to the next game.
No, I think that's about it for me with this game.
So you were at this game in the Hammer, supposedly really hot game there, right? Warm temperature wise. It got to be a little embarrassing here. Toronto coming in and just kind of kicking you guys in the face. I'll give Jason the floor first since he was there.
Yeah, honestly, I don't have that many notes about this one because the same game, it seems like, has been played 3 times between these two teams this season. I think where Toronto's really just jumped on them in the first half and Hamilton just hasn't been able to dig themselves out of that hole. And I mean, it was brutally hot, like you said. Most people are just hanging out underneath the concourse in the shade. The sun side, you were really just cooking out there in the sun. So that was not very enjoyable from that perspective. But, I mean, the game was basically over in the first quarter. I mean, Toronto just a much, much more explosive offense than Hamilton. And I think that, Hamilton just didn't do anything well to begin this game. And I think that Toronto, on the other hand, everything went well for them. So, I mean, Toronto is really just clearly the best team in the CFL right now, especially with Winnipeg's loss this weekend. And I think they really proved it this week.
Yeah, they posted out Hamilton. They said, today's Labor Day, our highest attendance for a Tiger Cats home game in Tim Hortons history, which is wild to me. I think that's wild that they haven't. And I had tweeted somewhere, and they all went home sad. So I know that. Jason, now be honest, did you stay or did you leave early when this game got out of hand?
I actually stayed till like 2 minutes left in the fourth quarter, actually. So I stayed longer than some of the games I've stayed this season. I know the Edmonton game I left at halftime a couple of weeks ago. So,
Evan, what did you make of this? I know we were talking in the chat. And of course, Mike Mitchell's going crazy. I have comments about AJ and all this, but I'll give you the floor first.
Yeah, I mean, I felt the same way. I think when I turned the game on, it was 17-0. Toronto was up. So, that was I don't know. It was obviously surprising, I think. I expected Hamilton maybe because it was Labor Day, to kind of maybe put a better effort forward. But, Toronto really is just that good of a team. And you have to keep in mind, like, that they were playing in such extreme heat. Like, I didn't even realize that until, after the game, like what the temperature was. I was like, geez, like, well, no wonder, certain people are struggling out there. Like, no kidding. But yeah, just like Jason said, I mean, I feel the same exact way. We've seen this before when it comes to the Toronto and Hamilton matchup specifically from this season. I feel like every time they play, Toronto just gets the early jump. And, Hamilton will make a late push. They'll make a late effort. They can still score. They can still get something going. But it's always too little too late, and when the opponent is scoring 41 points, it's going to be really hard to, match that or, let alone top that. So, yeah. Ultimately, this game, I expected Toronto to win, and they did. So again, pretty routine performance. Chad Kelly, he had 2 picks. Wouldn't say it was flawless from him, but if you look at the stat sheet, Toronto's offense looks just about the same as they normally do. I think AJ Ouellette had his nearly 80 rushing yards, whatever, which seems regular now for him. And again, very healthy average. Receiving core definitely well broken up. They have they had 3 guys catch receiving touchdowns, 3 different guys. I think my favorite play of this game was the AJ Ouellette passing touchdown. That was definitely a surprise, and it was from what I can recall yesterday, that was a pretty decent pass too. It wasn't some like thing right at the goal line, in the red zone. He threw that thing right down there. It was a pretty decent gain. So good for AJ. 26 yards. Wouldn't say that's easy for a running back. But yeah, that was definitely a highlight play from this game. I forgot to mention too, like even in that Calgary Edmonton game, there was a bit of trickery. I think teams wanted to, open up some interesting plays this weekend, in front of a big audience, and I mean, you definitely saw that here with Toronto, although they were the away team technically. But anyway, going back to Hamilton, I'll touch on them briefly, even though, I don't have many notes on them either. Taylor Powell, I like Taylor Powell's continued progress. It's a shame he has – I feel like he's had a lot of, decent stat lines this season. But, again, Hamilton hasn't been winning a bunch. I mean, he nearly threw for 300 yards in this game. So I was a bit surprised by that initially, given, again, felt like Hamilton's offense was pretty slow there until, the second half. And then, just going down the sheet here, Tim White, I'm very impressed with Tim White. Hamilton has a nice rotation of receivers that I think can come in and do things. Like I've talked about Terry Godwin in the past, and he had 2 touchdowns in this game. A couple other guys. Again, I'm still waiting for a big Duke Williams game. I know he might have had one a couple weeks ago, but really I thought, he would just be doing 100 yards every week. But clearly that hasn't been the case, and maybe some of that has to do with quarterback play. But ultimately, I think that's all I have on this game. Pretty straightforward. I mean, this game kind of stood out as the one that, maybe wasn't as enjoyable as the other 3 games on the slate this weekend, just because it kind of fell over so quickly.
Yeah, I had here, and I want to get Jason's thoughts on this. It really felt like Hamilton was turning the around, and they had the big win last week against BC that just looked absolutely anemic. How are you feeling right now? Because I know, Jason, you said like, well, it's kind of the same game I've seen. Like, what is your welfare check right now?
Well, they're going to win in Ottawa next week, so they'll bounce back from this. But I think that I've seen this before from the Ticats. They look like Grey Cup contenders, one game every year where they just beat a quality opponent. They did that last week against BC. Last year was when they beat Winnipeg at home. So, I mean, I've seen this before where they have this big performance and then they have that classic Ticats letdown. So I was expecting them to lose this one, but I thought they would be a little bit more competitive, like it was because it was on Labor Day, like Evan said.
It felt like, it seemed like they were mounting a little bit of comeback. They had the touchdown, and then they had that horrendous kind of offsides kick, trying to do the short kick, and they cut to Jeff Reinbold on the sidelines, their special teams coach. He's just like, that's the game. I mean, you can't spot Toronto. What was that? They're starting on like the 45, and they immediately go down and score. I wanted to say I had a couple of clips here. This AJ Alette, I know we talked about his touchdown. This man is becoming a superstar kind of in front of our eyes. I mean, this is incredible stuff he's doing on the field, and now he's got the off the field stuff. I saw him doing they had the panel there, with Milton, Kate, and everyone doing the halftime and at the end of the game, and he's there with Thor's hammer, and he's kind of talking with them. They even brought it out when he scored the touchdown. I thought that was really exciting. Like, this is just really fun stuff. Obviously we've talked a lot about Chad Kelly this season, but seeing AJ Alette here, I think is really great. The other comment I had was Chad Kelly was having the time of his life here. And I know he got the big contract extension that we kind of missed the episode talking because I think it was after the thing last week, but then I had whatever taped stuff, but him getting his big extension. And it really looks like I did not see this from Chad Kelly wanting to be kind of the perennial lifer here in the CFL, but really looks like I'd be dancing on the sidelines too if I was extended to one of the highest quarterback contracts here. Evan, what did you make of this with the Chad Kelly? I know we missed kind of talking about his contract stuff.
Yeah, it was definitely, I think, a bit of a surprise. I think a lot of us, believe that, I don't want to say ego was going to get in the way, but, we all kind of believe that he was going to be looking for another NFL shot, and he still might get one. I'm personally skeptical that he will, just because I feel like, there was so much. I mean, dare I get into the Nathan Rourke stuff and how all that's gone over. But, I don't know if he's going to get an NFL shot at this point, just because, again, he has a bit of a different past compared to guys, that we've seen go CFL to NFL, especially at the quarterback position. I mean, let's be honest, there's not a lot of them. Yeah, I mean, I think, it was a well-deserved contract. And, some people also might view this as a bit of a risk just because, this is Chad's first year starting. But I have no doubts. I mean, they're the best team in the CFL right now. This doesn't look like some sort of fluke. I mean, he's been performing well now through, 13 weeks. Hats off to him. I mean, again, well-earned and, excited to see, him hopefully stay in Toronto and kind of build a culture there. Because like right now, I mean, they're very well. It looks like they're well on their way back to another Grey Cup. And that's where it all kind of started for Chad last year, when he came in, and that's when everyone started talking about him again. I think we've talked about it before, but like, he had played a game before that, but, not exactly a memorable one. And I think it was only one game. So, for him to come into the Grey Cup and make that impression, like, I honestly think that's probably where they realized, like, we need to extend this guy one way or another. And then he's, the play has definitely spoken for him this season on that front. So, yeah, really happy for Chad. It's great. Again, Chad Kelly is one of those guys where you really thought his career was kind of over and you didn't know what was going to happen to him. And I mean, I felt like a couple steps away from retirement at one point, but what a turnaround. I mean, here he is, just slinging it in Canada every week. And I don't think that's exactly what everyone expected, but working out pretty well for him. And he said, he's gone on record saying, how much he loves being up there in Toronto and it feels like a home, and, he can really build something there. And again, like, I feel like he wants to be there. It's not a fluke. It's not, just saying that because we're winning and I can go get another championship ring. I really feel like, it's important to him, the city of Toronto and the culture and everything. And again, just couldn't be happier for him. I think it's been a rough maybe couple years for him in the past. He's dealt with some legal problems, and I know he's had, I think his character maybe, I don't want to say torn, but his character's been, I think, looked at in a couple different ways. A lot of people, I don't know, had the best image of him, but he's definitely cleared that. He's cleared that all up now, and that's really good to see. Guys really making something out of what originally was nothing in a way.
Yeah, it's, to me, it speaks to, and it's the same thing with the XFL and the USFL, like trying to get to this point of, be in a spot where people can land and be comfortable there, even if it isn't your first choice. And obviously Chad and, the Nathan thing, I think really kind of hurt. And you can still see with the CFL media trying to kind of rebound from that. Oh, look, like he's still doing well. Like, you want the CFL to be a place where a Chad Kelly can come in and I can make whatever. What's his contract? $600,000 a year, whatever. Like, I can make great money. I'm a superstar. I have a great team. The staff here is awesome. The coaching is great. I'm a superstar in Toronto. Like, I think you got to get to that point, and I think it's exciting. You need to have Chad Kellys like that. In the XFL and the USFL, we just saw where, the XFL got a puncher to the NFL this year. That's awesome, and I'm glad everyone got opportunities. But you need to get to the point where, like, the XFL can be that too. Of like, hey, you can play in the spring and you can do your other stuff, and still get on TV and kind of be whatever of a superstar. I had a question here. For Jason, before we move off this game, first off, Andy pointed out they had like their alt thing on today, where it was like the alt logo, and it kind of looks like the History Channel logo. I thought that was funny. Their uniforms were great though; these alternative ones. Jason, what did you make of that? And then what was this halftime show? Because I know they had it on. I had it on mute because I was watching the Mariners on split screen. Were the Proclaimers, were they there? Were they playing, or was this a cover band?
This was a cover band. They're a cover band that just plays covers. So I believe their name is Dwayne Gretzky. Yeah. And, the acoustics, the sound in Tim Hortons Field is honestly awful, I think.
It's horrendous,
I couldn't hear any of the halftime show, to be honest, from where I was standing. But the guys that were standing down there looked like they were having fun.
I can speak from experience because they had the "What's Your Made Of" for when they were there for the halftime show when I was there, or it was him and then the Lumineers, or he did like the opening and then it was the Lumineers and all of that, and yeah, it all sounded like they just like put all these speakers and like they brought out all these big speakers and angled them all to the fans. It just like blah, 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 like, you can't hear anything. Jason, last thing on this, did you like the alt whatever they have? Is this a throwback jersey? What is this the kind of black hammer jersey?
I think they introduced it last year. I think they're called the Made in the Hammer jersey or something like that. Yeah, I like them as like a third jersey. I like the regular home jerseys better, but it's always good to have a little change up in the look.
Well, here we go. Moving on here. I have been excited to talk about this game until obviously we had the great kind of game last night with straightforward and all that. Listen to this, watch this every snap. The big Labor Day Classic. I was filming. I do these little Indian festivals, and so I had my little CBS Sports app, and I had my Bluetooth. I was listening and then watched the game. On the way home, this was great. Saskatchewan has been, lost many a time at home with Winnipeg kind of coming in. Saskatchewan here, we have the penalties and all of that to talk about, everything else. Evan, do you have thoughts on this one before we get into it?
Yeah, I mean this game was great. I unfortunately only really got to watch the end of this game, and it sucks because I really like this game. I think I would have really enjoyed watching from start to finish live. Yeah, man, what a great it was just great. That's the best way I can put it. And I think what's really important here, what I'll really get into before we start talking about players and flow of the game and everything like that, is Saskatchewan. So a couple weeks ago, I had this debate. It was kind of like, well, Calgary and Saskatchewan are the two teams in the West where it's like they're kind of battling for that last spot. And I think with this game, and I mean, it was trending a certain way even before this game, but with this game, I think Saskatchewan has officially, put themselves in that spot. They've separated, Calgary. Yeah, I get it. They won. They had to come back, whatever. They're maybe not out of it entirely, but I don't know. It's like Saskatchewan, I think with Jake Dolgallo at the helm, has been doing some really cool things. And, they're definitely making a lot of progress. They're above 500 right now. So they're over that hump. I just really like what I've seen from them. And I feel like, I'm not going to say that, they're going to go into the playoffs and make a statement, because I still feel like there's a couple things that we have to see before that. But, man, I wouldn't just immediately count this team out, the playoffs. I mean, if they can beat BC, if they can beat Winnipeg, there might be something there. And I know that's what a lot of people might not want to hear. But I know Saskatchewan fans, they're probably sitting there, hopefully we're thinking the same way, because, I do feel like there is something now with that team. I feel like they are better now than they were even with Trevor Harris, maybe. I don't know if that's a bold statement or not, but there's just a lot of things that I feel like are, coming full circle over there, and it's good to see. And given how much change they've had over the past year, they're kind of a rebuilding team in a way, but they've already made a quick impression, and clearly they have the right personnel, I think, to get it done. And right now, I see them in the playoffs, and I see them still being competitive there.
Yeah, so obviously the big kind of not highlight, but the big talking point of this game is the hit here we had on Collaros after the play. Pete Robertson, and I had tweeted out yesterday, them sending out, he'll be suspended for the Banjo Bowl, so he won't be in the game here on the 9th. Jason, kind of initial thoughts on this, because this was kind of the big thing, and we had Collaros. I saw Jeff Hamilton interviewing him after the game, talking, where I have the clip here, if I can get to it quick enough. Friend of the show, Jeff Hamilton, and he's like, what do you think they're going to do? And Collaros is like, what do you think they're going to do? They're not going to do anything. He was visibly upset about this. He had the quote, with his history of concussions, he was surprised that they kind of didn't immediately do whatever. And I know they pulled him off the sidelines to kind of do some checks. What did you make of this? Kind of real controversial, and almost cost the Riders the game, obviously, until they came back.
Yeah, I think this was one of the stupidest things I've ever seen on a professional football field, or even professional sports in general, honestly. And that's saying a lot, because I watch the NHL as well. So, I mean, there's some dumb things that go on there as well. But, I mean, just, it didn't make any sense to me. Why, it was so late after the play, too. It didn't make any sense to me. I mean, I don't think Pete Robertson is a guy that has a reputation as a dirty player either. So, I mean, I don't know what was going through his head there, but he's rightfully suspended for next week.
Yeah, they said here, Collaros couldn't believe that they failed to even throw the flag, and then they needed the command center to get the call. A lot going on there, because it was incredible there, because you're sitting there, I'm driving home watching the game, and they get the stop, and they're going to force Winnipeg to kick the field goal, and I think it would have tied the game at that point. And then they go, and he does this, completely gives them a whole new set of downs, plus everything else. Pipkin came in, and what I thought was kind of cool was you saw Collaros on the sidelines mad, because you got to sit out at least 3 plays, and we got to go through the protocol here. And he wants to get back in, and he's fired up, and you think, God, I just drove the whole way down the field, we want to score, we want to take the lead. Really kind of hot there going into overtime. I guess it was the first overtime victory here in Labor Day Classic history, which is crazy. Rob Vanstone, friend of the show that now is with the Riders. Evan, I know we talked like Saskatchewan kind of turning the corner here. Winnipeg, third loss for the season. What do you make of that?
I'm still not worried, but I think it's still a reminder that I can't say this team has regressed either. It's just still a reminder that things might be more tight now. Not just in the West, but really across the entire CFL than they were before. I mean, for a while, it just felt like Winnipeg. They were the standard, and I think they still are. Because every time you think Winnipeg's out of it, they'll turn things around and they'll get you. I mean, if they go out, I don't know who they're playing next week. I haven't looked at the schedule yet, but I mean, they could go out and do
Well, it's
some.
the Banjo Bowl back. It's the back and back. Yes, it's Saskatchewan
Yeah,
coming into
that's
Winnipeg.
right.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, they're playing Saskatchewan again. That's right. Okay, Banjo Bowl.
It's gonna be
I mean,
hot.
yeah,
No, that's a hot game right now.
yeah. I mean, that they look. Winnipeg could easily go out there. I mean, they're back at home, Banjo Bowl. Like they could go dominate next week against Saskatchewan. I wouldn't be surprised because again, I think they still set a standard. But the reality is like they're not. I think they were 15-3 at one point last season, or was that? I think they were 50-3. Yeah. I mean, now they're already 9-3. You've got 6 games left. I don't know if they're going to go undefeated. The rest of the way. So I don't know. I mean, again, record is one thing. I'm not really going to get into record, but I think my overall point here is just, even though Winnipeg may still be the standard, you can't guarantee things with them the same way. I mean, they've had some games this year where you're really just scratching your head, and even games that they've won. There's been a couple times where I'm like, what's going on here? Like, this isn't the Winnipeg that we know and love and that we've gotten accustomed to. I still think they have all the right pieces in place. It's not something that needs to be changed. It's just, I don't know. I feel like sometimes, when you win for so long, we use the term too comfortable. And I'm not going to say Winnipeg's too comfortable either. But, I feel like they might be trending in that direction sometimes where they just have the mentality that regardless of what happens, we can get it fixed. But, sometimes the opponent might be looking at that differently and they might be coming out too hungry. And, so we'll see. It'll be interesting to see, what happens. Again, I can't wait for the playoffs. There's a lot of intriguing things here. I just mentioned before, Saskatchewan, I think, really has some momentum building. And, boy, if they go into Winnipeg in the Banjo Bowl next week and they go take that game, I'm really starting to get sold on them because at that point they're 7-5, and I don't know, that's a team I would not count out because I've always said Roughriders have a lot of pieces on that team that I like, and again I like a lot of pieces on other teams, but Saskatchewan in particular has some that I feel like guys that could be true superstars. Maybe not all of them have hit that status yet, but they're certainly working towards it. And this weekend was a great example of that. So, Winnipeg, going back to your point, Reed, I don't know. This game for them, I think, part of it might have been – I was really impressed with the crowd in Saskatchewan. Part of it might have just been pure intimidation. And, maybe they haven't experienced that in a long time. I mean, I know they have good home crowds themselves, but, a bit different when it's the Labor Day Classic and it's a great rivalry on the line. And, again, Banjo Bowl next week, so there's another opportunity for them to, they're going to go back to their home and try and, avenge this loss, I guess. But, yeah, ultimately, I think Winnipeg is just, they have these games now where they just there's a couple more miscues and it ultimately ends up costing them. I think every game that they lose or, that isn't good for them, I feel like it's still close. So that's, again, why we're not writing Winnipeg off at all. There's no way we could do that. They are the most talented team in the league. But, sometimes there's moments like this where, things just don't work out. And that was a prime example of it. Saskatchewan, I think, was just too much. And, again, it was like Calgary. They just had that, like, we need to go out and win this game. We're at home. It's a great rivalry. There's so much on the line. If we don't win now, like, it puts us in a, I guess, worse position. Like, now that Saskatchewan won this game, again, they're over 500, which to me is a pretty big deal, with playoffs coming up in only a couple weeks, really. So, I don't know. That's my bit about that. I feel like there's maybe got carried away a bit, but there's a lot to talk about there. It's interesting because
No, you need this rivalry to be hot because Saskatchewan had got blanked at home for many, many years. I mean, Jason, like, that's what I liked about it was this. You call these rivalries sometimes when Winnipeg comes in and kicks your teeth in. It's like Toronto here with Hamilton. I mean, this was a great showing. Like, how bullish are you on Jake Delgado and kind of everything else here with Saskatchewan, Jason?
Well, I mean, I think Dolegala has looked really good since taking over the starting role. I think that one thing that stands out to me with him is the arm strength. I mean, there were several tight window throws he made in this one. I think on the 2-point conversion to win the game, he had a really nice throw on that one as well. So I think that it's good that he's playing well. And as long as they can have competent quarterback play, I think the rest of the roster is pretty good. Like their defense, I know they gave up 30 points, but ultimately they frustrated Winnipeg for large portions of this game. Look at Zach Claris's completion percentage, pretty poor in this game, and I think he had a really rough first half especially. So I think Saskatchewan's team overall is pretty good, and I think that maybe they even get Trevor Harris back down the stretch, and they can make some noise in the playoffs.
Yeah, Bombers had no passing yards in the first quarter, which is insane. It's insane to think that when you like just visualize in your head, like, okay, like Winnipeg, like, to be held to no passing yards. I had the other things here. Oh, and then we just had a couple like where Winnipeg, they had the kickoff and they declined the no yards, or they gave up. Like there was a couple of rouges back and forth that Winnipeg gave up that kind of, they kind of exist in a vacuum, but then when it comes down to the end of the game and you go to overtime, it's just cool. Like I know people poo-poo the rouge and all of that, but then when you get down to this tie ball game, it's kind of crazy that way to see kind of how everything comes together. I also thought the game was delayed on CBS Sports here in the States because there was soccer going on at Audi Field, which I just thought was interesting because Audi Field is obviously the home of the DC Defenders for the XFL. So I thought that was interesting. Weird timing there. Super Mario Alfred, they call him Mario Alfred, doing really good. Do we like that? Do we like the Super Mario nickname? Evan, are you high on the Super Mario Alfred nickname for Mario Alfred?
I don't know about nicknames, man. I mean, last time I think we talked about nicknames, it was the Donut Boys in BC, and I don't know. We think it's been a bit far from that in recent weeks, unfortunately. But I mean, sure, I'll tell you, I like Mario Alfred as a player. He's again, not one of the guys that I feel like, maybe he doesn't get enough credit still, because he's, a returner. Just like guys like Chandler Worthy, I don't think get enough credit either. But you can have fun with it.
A couple comments here. Scott, friend of the show, big Argos fan. Cats go Argos. Jason, anything else on the Labor Day Classic? We'll get into BC here.
No, it was just a great game. Honestly, it really lived up to the name of being a classic, and just a classic, great football game.
Well, it's cool. I mean, we were at the Grey Cup last year, and it was not a very good crowd. I think a lot of Saskatchewan fans were upset, because the team missed the playoffs, and they either they didn't want to give Winnipeg. Like there was all this controversy. Like they didn't want to go, and they didn't want to sell the tickets. So it was cool to see Mosaic like big, like kind of full, because it just, when I was there, I was kind of looking around. I was like, man, this is really not a good crowd for the Grey Cup. So good to see kind of Mosaic showing that they can draw for that. Last game here, at one point in time, this would have been maybe a little bit more. I wouldn't have worried about this game, but BC has not played great here the last couple weeks. Felt really bad. Had Cody on the show. Cody really did not have a good game here. I felt really bad for that. He had a couple that end zone interception at the end. We'll go first, Jason. What did you make of this? BC winning, but I thought the storyline here was Cody maybe faltering a little bit.
Yeah, it was a must-needed win for BC, but yeah, I think the bigger takeaway is Montreal, and I think that they still had a chance to come back in this game late, but there was a key roughing the passer call that was challenged, and I think it was Armando Sewell that had a big sack that would have knocked BC out of field goal range when BC was only up 2 at that point of the game. And upon review, they gave them that roughing the passer call, and BC was able to get the insurance touchdown. So this game was a little bit closer than the score would indicate, but I think at the end of the day, the Alouettes have proven once again that they cannot beat any of the big 3 teams in the CFL, the BC, Toronto, or Winnipeg. And, they're 0-5 against them, and I think they're 6-0 against everybody else.
Yeah, I was watching, I had my CFL Plus on my laptop. I had the Mariners on because this was the online game, and Mariners came down. They had the nail biter. We beat the Mets. JP had a home run at the top of the 9th, and then I'm watching the BC, and Montreal is making I'm like sweating through my socks. I really couldn't handle it. It was too much stress here. Evan, what did you make of this? Vernon finally coming back. Like BC really needed this. I mean, this kind of would have been a disaster for BC season to drop another one.
Right. I mean, BC definitely needed it, but I feel like the storyline, I mean, you can't. I just look at Montreal, and I feel like that was such a winnable game for them. I really thought they were going to win. Not that. I mean, not to discredit BC or anything like that. We all know they have the potential, and they ended up, putting the game away, and that was all fine and well. But I don't know. I just looked at Montreal, and I'm like, it must just suck flat out because you've got. I look at that game and I'm like, they had a chance to win despite Cody Fajardo, playing one of his worst games of the season. And I don't know. When BC kind of overpowered them there at the end, but yeah, definitely a much needed win for BC. I guess I'll start on that side since it's a bit more positive. Vernon Adams once again, 300 yards, 3 touchdowns. Like, what's new? Just continues to do that every week, and we shouldn't be surprised at all. Taquan Mizell, whatever it is, he had I'd say, a somewhat quiet game, especially because Montreal, Will Stanback ripped off a big run, and I'd say he was probably the more impressive running back between the two. But like, I'd give some credit to Taquan Mizell. I mean, he scored a touchdown, nearly 5 yards a carry. I'd say pretty underrated performance from him, and not a player that we've talked about ad nauseum this season, just because I feel like, BC hasn't been running the ball a lot. They like this, wide open offense where Vernon can throw, 300 yards, no problem. And they've got 6 different receivers, working with whatever. There's just not really a need for a guy like Mizell to do much, but he did in this game. He stepped up and made something happen. So that was good to see. And even Vernon, you look there, the stat sheet, 8 carries, 54 yards, 6.8 average. I mean, he was working there too. He was moving around, and I know the announcers were talking a bit about Vernon, just to see him confident in his running abilities again. We're good. He kind of, I think, continues to build on that. Ever since his injury, I think there's been an increased level from him when it comes to running the football. And then again, receiving, go down there like Alex Hollins, what's new? He's almost taken over that number 1 role in recent weeks. And I know he was just on your show.
Friend of the show, yeah.
Yep, he was just doing that. I mean, he was a really big player when I went to that game against Calgary. And Keon Hatcher, that's been the 1-2 punch really lately. Is Alex Hollins and Keon Hatcher. Those guys, I think, have really stepped up more than anybody else, and that's good to see. More than anything. And then going back to Montreal now, Cody Fajardo. Well, I think we've already talked about that. It was just not his best day. He's had as much as I've seen some surprising things from him this season, and overall a bit of improvement. And again, he's playing better than I thought he would coming over from Saskatchewan. But he's, as much as there's been those games, there's also been these games where it's like, it just feels like there's nothing going. And yeah, he throws for 300 yards, whatever, but sure didn't feel like that watching the game. I was like, it just felt like there was a lot of struggles there, which is unfortunate because, again, I do root for Cody at the end of the day, and I feel like he does kind of have I don't want to say he has an underdog mentality, but I feel like in some ways he is the underdog in a lot of situations. Montreal's in this weird spot now where that they can beat the bad teams, but they can't win against the good teams. So they're kind of in this weird middle spot, and kind of waiting for them to really separate themselves here in the last couple weeks. So I'm sure they understand that, and I do believe that Cody can lead that charge here down the stretch again in these final couple weeks. But I think that the main storyline of the game for me here, well, outside of Austin Mack, who had a great game on the receiving end, but we already talk about him so much. I don't want to recycle that too much, but Will Stanback, Stanback had that slow start to the season, and he's been improving slowly since then. But man, I mean, he ripped off that run. Went over 100 yards on the day. That was great. That to me, for the first time in a long time, that felt like old Will Stanback, because he used to do that all the time. I feel like people who maybe are new to the game don't realize, but this used to be a normal thing. This used to be something that happened every week. You didn't think much of it, but now it's more of a rarity. So to see him do that, felt extremely special. Again, we talk about everything that's happened with him, everything that's gone on. It hasn't exactly been, I think, the best season for him, although he has started to improve again in the past couple weeks. I think he will finish, at a very respectable spot here. But, again, just one hell of a play. And, seeing that live, it just made me feel good. I was like, and at that point in the game, like to take the lead, just felt like, again, that was exactly what Montreal needed. And I really hope we can see more of that again from Will down the stretch here in these next or last couple of games. Just because I really feel like, he could honestly be the key piece of this team if for whatever reason, Cody keeps struggling. They only have maybe one or two guys on the receiving front that can get it done. Although they did have some receivers come back too, and I know they've been depleted there, but I don't know. I look at Will stand back and I'm like, this could be the guy that, again, really, allows Montreal to separate a bit and get that big win that I think they've been lacking for a while now. So I don't know. That's my take on that. That was probably one of the most impressive parts for me. Yeah.
Oh, totally. No, Lewis has a question here about the Banjo Bowl. We'll talk about that at the end here. We'll finish this game. The question I have for Jason is, when we saw Cody go out, Caleb Evans performed really well, right? I mean, I don't know, did they win both the games or they won at least one of them with him? There was calls. We maybe don't want Cody to be the starting quarterback. Cody came back. They were on the short week, coming back from injury last week. They lost here, losing to BC with a full week. And that was kind of what Cody had talked about in our interview. And if you guys missed that, the episode, we had Randy and Cody and who we had Stephen Dunbar on, really good show last week. But here, now there's not a lot of excuses. I guess I'm concerned for that. Tim and Cliffy here tweeting out with the Outlets Fight Deck. Cody's looking overwhelmed, and it shows. Very boring football. Like, how long do we stay with Cody here, Jason? I guess is my question.
Well, I think he still has a relatively long leash, but it could get interesting because their next two games back-to-back against Toronto. So those could be two losses. They could be sitting at 6-7 after being 6-3. So that could be a very realistic scenario. And I think at that point, maybe you consider if Fajardo is really the reason for them losing those games, I think maybe you consider a switch there. But I don't have much belief in Caleb Evans as a starting quarterback in the CFL. I mean, yeah, he won those two games, but I don't think he can show that with any consistency. And I think we saw that over his time in Ottawa the past couple of seasons. So I think they're better off just riding it out with Cody unless it completely goes off the rails here.
Jason, what did you make here of the Montreal loss? Because they've looked hot, right? I mean, I'm cheering for BC, but obviously I care about Montreal and their well-being as well. But what is the storyline now for Montreal season? Because like you said, these two games, they could, Toronto could come in and just completely kind of knock the wheels off this season. Like, what do you make of their welfare going forward?
Well, I mean, it's hard to say because going into the season, I thought this was arguably going to be the worst team in the CFL, and they're certainly not that. But I think they're somewhere in that mushy middle of the CFL where they're nowhere close to those top teams, and they're just nowhere close to being one of the worst teams. So they're just kind of in the middle there. They'll probably still finish second in the East just because of the status of the rest of the teams. Hamilton doesn't look like they have their stuff together. Ottawa is very far from that as well. So I think Montreal still finishes second, but I mean, I don't have any faith in them, even if they win the East Division semifinal, to go into Toronto and put up a fight. So I think at the end of the day, they're just kind of caught in the middle, and I don't think that they have a way out of it at this point.
Yeah, just looking at my notes here. Yeah, the run we showed from Stanback, that was his first TD of the season, rushing TD, which is just crazy. I think where he was such a part of that. Yeah, like I said, Cody just really that terrible pick at the end, was trying to kind of play hero ball there, throwing I think there was 3 BC guys there with the receiver. Austin Mack looking good. Oh yeah, and then we had that Tyler Sneed trick play for Montreal. I think I had that pulled up at one point to show Montreal trying. I mean, they're pulling out some stuff. Evan, any other final thought? Final thoughts on this one before we kind of put this to bed?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I guess, still just looking down the stretch. I mean, Jason brought up, Montreal's next 2 games. I mean, we'll see what happens. Even if they do lose both of those, though, I mean, they're still going to be in a pretty decent position. It doesn't really affect them that much. I feel like, Montreal as a whole, we talked about Cody, but you look at the Alouettes as a whole, I mean, they have a pretty long leash, when it comes to, playoffs and things like that, just with the way the East has panned out. So I don't know. I think ultimately, there's still time to improve for Montreal, but right now, do they have the personnel to get that done? I don't know. I'm on the fence about it. Like, I feel like they could, come out and have some, I feel like they could go out and beat Toronto in one of these two, have a surprising outing. Like, you just never know. But even then, like, is that going to be an accurate representation of what they are going to the playoffs? Like, I don't know. It gets interesting here. We really are at kind of a turning point in the season. Again, I talked about, Saskatchewan, where they're at now, really, getting over the hump, getting over 500, big statement win on Labor Day. It feels like they're making progress. You've got some teams, Winnipeg, even BC slowing down a bit in recent weeks. Winnipeg, having their game this weekend. I don't know if you can say that's slowing down, but, they have 3 losses and, they're still at the top of the West, but still some questions there. So I don't know. It's a turning point in the season, and next couple weeks are definitely gonna, I think, define. We've had a lot of questions about certain teams this season, and we've always asked, are they this or are they that? I feel like a lot of that will get answered, within the next, next 3 or 4 weeks, maybe next month of the season through September. I'd say is when we really start, figuring out like, okay, well, were we right about these guys? Were we wrong? And all the things that we've said in the past. So for me, it's kind of like an evaluation period as a whole.
You get to this, and I remember when we started covering the CFL, they're like, the games don't matter till after Labor Day, and I hate that because like we're trying to sell attendance and TV ratings during the summer, but it is what they say. Like, this is kind of the second half of the season, and that's why we had Randy Ambrosi on this week to kind of do the midseason checkup. We had a funny comment here. Luis says, was Cody and the Alouettes lost the curse of coming on the Markcast. Well, so like Stephen Dunbar had a good week. Alex Hollins is having good. I think it's just quarterbacks. I think it's quarterbacks because Makai Bethel-Thompson came on when they were undefeated with the Breakers, and then the Breakers lost. I don't even know if the episode had aired yet. Like, I think I taped it for like a week ahead, and I think they lost after he came on. And then famously, what was his name with Ben Holmes did not come on the podcast and then won a Grey Cup. So I think that the curse only works for quarterbacks. I think otherwise, if you're any other skill position player, you can come on and you're fine. The last thing here, Luis had a question about the Banjo Bowl, talking about that. And I think they answered it in the chat, but it was it was coined after the Blue Bombers Spencer Troy Westwood a number of years ago called. He said everyone in Saskatchewan is like banjo picking inbreds or something. Jason, do I have that quote right?
Yeah, I think so.
Jason, looking ahead at the schedule here, like we said, BC, much needed bye week, and then they'll come in, they'll host Ottawa at home. Really has to be a must win, I think, for BC there on week 15. Any other thoughts looking at the schedule next week? I know we talked about Montreal going into, was it the 619 or whatever they call it there?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting slate next week with all the rematches and, of course, Hamilton and Ottawa as well. So I think, Hamilton just seems to have Ottawa's number. I'm interested to see if that continues. The Red Blacks, this is really their season. If they lose this game, they're pretty much out of it completely. But if they can win, maybe they can crawl their way back into it. They would actually be even with the Ticats in wins. So I think they'd be one behind in the loss column. But I think at the end of the day, that's a huge game for both of those teams. And I think, for the other games, I think Calgary and Edmonton, again, if Calgary can win that game as well, they'll have 5 wins. Saskatchewan, if they pick up a loss here, I think Winnipeg probably bounces back and beats Saskatchewan this week. I think that's just the nature of them. I think they rarely lose 2 games in a row. I can't really think of the last time they've lost 2 games in a row. So I think that's what I'm looking forward to next week.
Yeah, this is what is this, a triple header on Saturday? That's remarkable here. Except for save for this Hamilton game, the Friday. That's kind of, I don't know about that. This is a tremendous slate of games here, especially coming off of, I think this Banjo Bowl is going to be very hot, like we talked about with kind of the obviously the penalties and all that stuff. Seeing here with Edmonton and Trey Ford, and then I'm really curious, like we've said with Montreal and all of that. Very excited. Evan, any other thoughts on week 14 looking ahead?
Yeah, I mean, definitely some interesting games on the slate here. I know we talked about, Saskatchewan and Winnipeg, kind of the revenge game. And same with Calgary and Edmonton, both those teams. Well, Calgary already won. So really it's Edmonton, revenging their sort of slip up in the fourth quarter and giving up 22 points. But, the Saskatchewan-Winnipeg game, I think, really could be if Saskatchewan wins, again, like I said, and they're 7-5, they go back-to-back, beating Winnipeg first, in at home and then away. I mean, that would be great for them. Then I would really feel confident about them, heading into this last couple game stretch of the season.
Yeah, I guess, right, we got NFL, so now we're gonna have that because no, I prefer the doubleheader Friday and then the doubleheader Saturday. 3 on that's a tough sell to the wife to
Yeah.
have the 3 games starting on that, but, yeah, I guess, goofy scheduling now with the NFL and all of that. We'll do our best. I need to figure out Friday's schedule. I'm not quite sure what we're gonna do. Been going back and forth with Jeff Hamilton, but I gotta work. We have this, like, Indian festival that goes, like, through the night, Wednesday into Thursday, and they kinda yeah, it's like their New Year's and it counts down at midnight and then they all go crazy. So we'll see. I'm not quite sure how motivated I'm going to be to record like five guest interviews on Thursday coming off of that, but we'll see. Check out Jason, your channel. Obviously, like and subscribe here as well. Thumbs up the video if we can. We got like we're peaking here viewership here at the end of the show, which is good. Jason, anything else from you? Anything you have coming down the pike?
Not too much. I actually recently just started an NFL show over on my channel as well. So go check that out in addition to all the CFL stuff I have over there.
Yeah, I was saying last night, I can't wait for Commanders football because the Mariners have just kind of broken my heart the last couple of days. So, with no BC this week, so we're cheering on the Commanders. We are playing the Cardinals, I believe, at home. If we don't win against the Cardinals, who have yet to name their starting quarterback, I think it's going to be a long season. So, God bless there. Evans, Cooper Kupp's out and hamstring injuries, and Evans got his own or a rash of problems over there. So, I appreciate everyone. Like I said, like and subscribe, check it out. We'll be back here next week, and thanks everyone.